been through all the materials yet, but are you do you play an integral part in this in book? And were you interviewed for the book? Or?
No, I was not interviewed for the book. In fact, I've moved so many times since 1961, it was impossible for anybody to reach me. In fact, the only freedom rider that I had seen since 1961 was a woman who was in my graduating class at the University of Chicago. I ran into her at a reunion. So I've seen her, I think, 3 times at reunions, but I hadn't been in touch with any of the other people. So to answer your question, no, I was not interviewed.
But when Eric found out that she was here in New Haven, he was very excited, and she will definitely be interviewed when he comes here in October. He has a website, which is a wonderful breach of additional materials on that website. The clothes that they wore, an interview with Kunstler, who was there representing many of the Freedom Riders and his encounters. So what the beauty of the internet is it doesn't just become the book, but it has life beyond the book.
One of the Calvin Trillin was on the very first bus that went down. So he's got some very interesting insight into his experience as well. I'm just interested in knowing, how did you learn about an opportunity to get on a bus and go? What sparked you to want to do that?
Well, what sparked me was that great photograph of the bus burning. And I was just so enraged that in this country that people would try to kill you because of your demanding rights that you were entitled to. And that was the day I actually decided that I would come. There was that photograph. It was in the Chicago papers where I was living at the time, and it was also in the New York Times. And the sight of those flames just spurred me on.
Well, there was no internet, so what did you do? Who did you call? Who did you connect with?
Well, I was already, I had been the previous year, I had been the campus chairwoman of the NAACP. And so I had some civil rights contacts. And I had gone down to, in March of 1960, I had gone down to Nashville to support the students who were sitting in at the lunch counters. And I had recently joined the Congress of Racial Equality because I thought it was, at that time, more progressive than the NAACP, or more likely to engage in direct and what I considered more effective action. And so I had a number of contacts. And so, and I knew James Foreman, who was one of the activists in the civil rights movement, and I went to him and told him I wanted to go.
Did your family know you were going to do this?
No, I did not tell my father because, first of all, I was 22 and I didn't have to. But I knew that my father, being like most parents, would not want me to risk my life in any way. He would have said, let someone else do it, or he told me years later, I think you should let boys do things like that, men do things like that. I said, well, what if there aren't enough men, to do it? And so I did not tell them. Instead, what I did was I dropped a postcard to my father the day I left. I dropped him a postcard telling him, if you can't reach me in the next few months, I'll be in Mississippi.
So you probably didn't know necessarily what to expect. I mean, except maybe some really horrible thing that might happen. So it wasn't like you went in, too naive about how serious this was. But what can you say about the time that you spent? You spent 2 months in penitentiary.
I spent July and August of '61 in Parchman Penitentiary.
Were you with other women freedom riders, or were you all by yourself?
No, the first night we were in jail, all the women who've been arrested for anything in the city of Jackson were all together. The second night we were in jail, we were transferred to the Hinds County Jail, where we were with other prisoners. And then for the rest of the time I was in jail, I was with other freedom riders. They segregated us by sex, and also by race. So I was in a cell with a woman from New Jersey, mother of 3 children, and she was a freedom rider. She was my cellmate for the next couple of months. But I really didn't know what to expect. I mean, I was sort of shocked when they put me through the body cavity search. I mean, I had no idea what they were doing. They threw me on a table and there I was. I had no idea that we wouldn't be able to have books. And I brought a suitcase full of books. I didn't know we wouldn't be able to smoke. And I had the terrible habit at that time of smoking. And so I had 10 cartons of Pall Mall cigarettes in my suitcase. And I had no idea we wouldn't be able to have visitors or read the newspaper or watch television. And yet that's what we were subjected to. The lawyer came up once to talk to us. Well, Parchment isn't near Jackson, and so, it wasn't necessary for him to come up there every day to tell us anything. But I had no concept of what jail was like. I thought it was more of a communal thing where you stayed, you went to mess and everybody ate. Instead, they fed the women. They kept the white and black women together, but separated by cell, according to your race. But I just had no idea that we would never get out to eat. They brought our food to us and slid it through a slot, and you ate it and slept and did everything else in your own cell. You and your cellmate.
Did you ever get out to exercise, or
No, twice.
what about to go take a shower?
In your face basin. They were right there, along with a double deck bunk bed, metal. They would let you out twice a week to walk to the end of the cell block where there's a shower, which they timed. And when the time was up, they just shut the water off, whether you were dry or soapy or whatever, and you walked back to your cell. That was the only time you ever saw other prisoners. Now, the situation with the men was different on the farm, because it was a self-sufficient farm prison. So they grew the food that we ate. I don't know what they did with the white men, but I seem to recollect that they kept them locked up too, for fear that they would get beaten up by other white prisoners. Yes?
Were there other students from Chicago who went with you? Or were you one of the only students?
No, there was the wife of a graduate student who was the mother of 2. She was arrested the same day with me. And the other prisoners who were arrested the same day that I was arrested were all males. There were 6 from New York, I think, and 6 from New York, and 3 of us from Chicago. But I was the only, technically I wasn't a student because I was between, I had graduated the year before, I had spent a year working in Chicago, and I was going to go back to graduate school in the fall. So I was between work, ending my first year of work, and going on to graduate school.
I mean, this is the Bible.
I had the Bible. That was one of the, I had the complete works of Shakespeare, and I had the Bible in my suitcase along with the Pall Malls.
And they took the Bible away.
But they took the Bible. They gave it all back to me the day I got out.
Right, but how
They
did
didn't
they,
make any attempt to justify
they
it.
didn't explain it.
Everything was arbitrary.
Mhm.
And they just weren't concerned with what we might need. I mean, I also brought stamps, stationery, so I could write letters to people, and they simply didn't pay any attention to that.
Two questions. Did it break your smoking habit?
It did until the day I got out. And then I broke into my suitcase and started smoking again.
And the other question is, I don't remember how long, how many freedom drives there were, how many buses were there, over what period of time, and were you all tried together, were you tried separately, and about
You were tried with the people who were arrested at the same time you were.
Right.
And in the group that I went with, there were 9 of us
Was it all
altogether.
one summer, basically, then?
It was basically during a very short period of time, 2 or 3 months, that all this happened.
And were you tried, you said you were tried separately, or tried?
You were tried with the group that you, I mean, for example, I was arrested on a Sunday, and on the Monday I went to trial.
And did all of you get about the same results from the trial, during the trial? Did you all have the same?
There was nobody who was not convicted, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
Everybody was convicted, but depending on when you went, you got different sentences. For example, the first Freedom Riders served 30 days, and then, but by the time I went, they were trying to discourage people from coming, and so they upped the
So they
sentence.
lengthened the sentence.
But they had changed the sentence to a longer period of time because they thought that would keep people from coming.
What month did you go down?
I went at the end of June.
Because it's from May 24th is when it started to, looks like July 29th.
Does anyone know how many buses there were altogether?
I don't know how many buses there were altogether.
It's in the book. When you get a chance, yeah. It's in the
And
book.
were you literally charged with breach of peace? Was that the,
That's the title of the book is the charge that we were,
and that was the only charge? breach
that
of
was the
peace?
only charge because nobody resisted. Nobody said anything. The only thing I can remember saying is that when Captain Ray, the arresting officer, came up to me, he said, "You have to leave," and I said, "No, I have a constitutional right to be here." That's the only thing I said to him, but there was no quarreling or resisting arrest or anything else.
And did this happen as soon as you stepped
As soon
off
as
the
I,
bus?
no, because there were 2 waiting rooms. There was a white waiting room and the black waiting room. So he waited until we went into, when the whites went into the black waiting room and the blacks went into the white waiting room, that's where they arrested you.
So that was all planned, they had you to do that? Did you know you were going to do that?
Did I know? Well, I knew that I had to go into the white waiting room.
The goal was to
I mean,
integrate.
the goal was to say, look, this is the U.S. law. No matter what your law says, we're going in here. We have a right to be here.
Well, the breach of peace, I think, again, in detailing all this, but they chose the breach of peace because basically what they were doing was legal. So there was really no other statute from which they could use to prosecute the Freedom Riders, because they were doing things within what was at that time the law of the land. So breach of peace was their way of capturing an act. You're doing something that is going to cause people to be upset. So the peace is being broken. And that was the way the terminology came about, and that's what you were charged with, and that's the...
But that's what is breaching the peace.
It's unnerving. It's going to cause people to be upset. It's rocking the boat, and so that's a kind of a nice catch-all. And I'm surprised because I would have thought breach of peace is like just a little misdemeanor. So that was the interesting part to me, that you could use what in effect sounds like a little misdemeanor to end up, 30 days in Parchment Prison with other people that are robbing and raping and stealing cars and doing things much more egregious to society. So that's also the other interesting aspect.
Right, it was our presence that was
Your
the breach
physical
of peace.
presence. Right.
And was it 2 months? Was it 60 days? Is that what you got?
I got 2 months.